Welcome back, everyone. Look, it's my great pleasure to introduce your General Secretary, Matt Rapp. Over to you, Matt.
Thank you very much, Mark, and good morning, everyone. I hope you're well, and thanks so much for attending this on a Saturday morning. An important part of our work, challenging area of our work, but an important part of our work in tackling issues relating to our supply members, but also more widely how supply teaching is provided within the education systems that we organise within. And I think there's a number of themes that I just wanted to touch on. One is how do we represent and organise our supply teacher members? I think there are questions about what is good policy that we should argue for within with governments. Uh, we have a debate which I'll touch on with the current Westminster Labour government, who've talked about in relation to employment rights about using the phrase "the greatest wave of insourcing in a generation," and we need to think what that means in relation to teaching and supply teaching. We need to look more widely at what the Employment Rights Act can do and what we can use to deliver improvements for supply teachers. And we need to look also, okay, at how we consider, for example, legal challenges, organisational challenges that might improve the lot of our members working in supply. And many of the figures I'm going to use relate primarily to England. And I think that's the area I've not, I don't know where every attendee has come from, but I think in England, the fragmentation of education has gone the furthest. And some of the scandals relating to exploitation and abuse of the system have gone the furthest. And so I will look at that in particular. And what our research shows is that as of 2023, 2024, there were something like 180 supply teacher agencies, and the use of those agencies has significantly increased over a decade or so. So that if you went back to 2014, some 62% of teachers, supply teachers, would be provided through those agencies, rising in 2023 to some 82%. So a significant increase in the role of the private supply agencies over that period, the same period of that we've seen austerity and other measures facing education, facing teachers. If you compare that with the use of local authority pools, that has declined over the same period to now just 2% of supply teachers being provided in that manner. We know that that has also driven up the costs to schools. And one area that we have particularly looked at and we've publicised in our publication, Where Has All the Money Gone, is about the profiteering in education and the role of private supply agencies in that profiteering. And again, there's a whole range of figures that we can use in this regard. But one set of DFE figures, for example, shows that an average cost to a school of £200 a day for a supply teacher. But of course, you'll know from experience that money is not going to the supply teacher. Just £101 on average is going to the supply teacher, the rest being taken by the agency and other costs. And the profits and costs taken by the supply agency, in that case, something like just over 45%. And the overall markup enjoyed by supply agencies in the region of 38%. The in terms of the overall costs of this, some 184 million pounds being spent by maintained schools going to agencies. And so, and there are various ways in which we can calculate how much supply agencies are making. But one figure is that broadly, £200 million a year being taken in profits by private supply agencies. So that figure in itself is quite shocking. And I just wanted to put it in the context of some other government initiatives. We've got a major debate around special and additional needs around SEND. The Westminster government currently consulting about SEND reforms. You may recall that just before the end of last year, the government announced a major initiative for investment in training of teachers relating to SEND and around inclusion. The total package of that was £200 million, exactly the same amount as is being made by the profits of supply agencies. So we can see that it's not an insignificant sum. It's money that could be put to better use, both in terms of improving the paying conditions of supply teachers on the front line themselves, and of course improving education as well. The impact of this on our members is, you will know all too well, it's a form of precarious employment. It is an area that has seen stagnating pay, and we know that across the public sector, the 15 years since the 2010 general election has seen austerity, has seen falling real wages in the public sector, and falling real wages for teachers across the UK. But that is significantly exacerbated for supply teachers, and we've seen a real plummeting of real wages for supply teachers, also compared to other teachers, and that's something that we need to consider and take up. And the truth is that many working in supply have not seen real pay increases since 2014. It's a shocking and a scandalous story, and one that we need to take up and address and challenge both employers, local authorities, and governments around. We've argued also that the system is inefficient, costly and inefficient. It means that schools are spending money which end up in the pockets of private agencies, while failing to really address the issues needed in schools, the needs of the schools, the needs of the students, and the pay terms and conditions of the teachers affected. It means poor retention, for example, which we know is already a major crisis across teaching. We think that there are better ways of making such provision, particularly raising the issue of bringing such provision in-house in one way or another. And if the government is serious about its aims to make work pay, then the question of teaching and of supply teaching needs to be a central part of that discussion. So that's an area where we are having discussions with government. We are raising these issues regularly, and we will have to step up that challenge in the coming months. I wanted to just spend a few minutes looking at the background to that, because it strikes me that we have to look at some of the fundamentals here if we're going to try and turn a corner. Otherwise, we are simply putting sticking plasters on individual problems, and while that might be necessary, and it is necessary in each case, we also need to look at what's driving the whole problem that we are facing in relation to supply teaching. And the truth is, we've seen a huge fragmentation of education over the over the past 15 years, particularly in England, particularly due to the drive towards greater and greater academisation. And we've seen a greater marketisation of education. And I think there's a fundamental debate we need to have as to whether schools and education should be seen as a public service or seen as something out of which people can make money. And the result of that process for teachers, and particularly marked for supply teachers, is frankly a race to the bottom, with that stagnating pay, stagnating living standards, poor conditions that we see as a result of that whole trend. And I think that we will need to face up to that, and we will need to demand that the Labour government faces up to that. And I want to return to that point about was used in the Labour manifesto in relation to the Employment Rights Act. So the Employment Rights Act is now law. It's a significant improvement in lots of areas, in trade union rights, individual rights, and so on. But part of that campaign was this phrase about the biggest wave of insourcing in a generation. And I think in education, one of the biggest areas of outsourcing has precisely been the question of supply teachers and the growth of supply teacher agencies. So we need a challenge to the government as to, are they serious about the biggest wave of insourcing? How do they intend to apply that in education? And how do they intend to apply that in relation to supply teachers and the abuse of the system by private supply agencies? And I'll just finish with a story, a personal story actually, about my sister is a retired principal in Canada, and she's followed this debate since I've been in this post, and she's followed some of the discussion on social media and she picked up on this point about supply teachers and made this comment. She says, well, in our school board, so they have a school, what we would think as an old-fashioned local authority type control of schools and education. Everyone is an employee of the school board, and everyone, including supply teachers, is on the same pay terms and conditions. So cutting through all the waffle we get from politicians, actually, the idea that you can't do things in different ways is simply not true. There are other and more sensible ways of delivering education, and there are other and more sensible ways in which we can deliver supply teaching. In any in any industry, in any public service, there is a need to plan for shortages, which may be of differing length. They may be for as you will know, they may be for short-term sickness, they may be for maternity cover, they may be for other reasons, but it is logical to plan for such provision and to build that planning into the delivery of the service as a whole. That should apply to education. And the staff providing that provision should be treated, in my view, exactly the same as any other person delivering that provision. And when we approach it with those principles behind us, I think it provides a guide as to the discussions that we can have with government, with employers, and the like, and provides us a guide of how we try to improve the situation for our supply teacher members and for schools and the delivery of education in schools as a whole. Thanks very much, Mark.